Welcome to Ground Control and part 4 in the review of this Eachine Mini F4U Corsair, and this is going to be the final video in the review. But you guys are glad of that, aren't you? Anyway, I had a very hard time getting this plane balanced to where I could use the same trim and the same counterweight for the nose heavy condition on this plane and have it perform the same way in manual mode. Every time I moved from intermediate gyro to manual mode, the balance and the trim was completely different. And I have to give credit to one of my posters, John Gamble. Thank you, John. John said, okay, well, you know, when you calibrate these gyro planes, the position of the plane when the gyro calibrates has everything to do with it. And John is absolutely correct. I had run into this issue with gyro planes before, so I don't know why I didn't think of that solution earlier, but thank you, John. It is greatly appreciated. Now, it only happens with this plane, the F4U Corsair, and I think it's because it's one or two things that's causing this issue. The P51 Mustang here, if I put it on its wheels when the gyro calibrates, it's fine. It doesn't have, you know, I still have full authority on the elevator when that is sitting on its wheels when the gyro calibrates. The gyro should know, based on its position in the fuselage, when it is horizontally level. It shouldn't detect that when the plane initializes. Now, sometimes it won't be able, if you connect your battery with the plane upside down, sometimes the gyro won't know up from down, but it should always know level based on the receiver board. So I don't have that problem with the P51 Mustang. I did not have that problem with the Volantex Sport Cub 500. You can plug the battery in with those planes sitting on their wheels, and the gyro is able to figure out level based on, you know, how it's setting inside the fuselage just fine. But this plane is unable to do that. So I tested that theory out today. Move this out of the way. So I had been, you know, connecting the battery with the plane sitting on its wheels. And the first time that I threw it in the air, in review part 1, I had absolutely no elevator authority whatsoever, and you know, everything, all the control surfaces were in a neutral position. And yet when I pulled the stick all the way back, it kept descending after I launched it. You know, went right into the scrub. So with this plane, what I did today when I plugged the battery in and the gyro initialized, I held the tail up like this. So and then I flew it and it was fine. I don't have any trim set in the elevator when I went out to fly it today for this final video review, and I had plenty of elevator authority in beginner mode and intermediate gyro mode. No problem. But I had to hold the tail up like this when the gyro initialized. Okay, so like I said, it's one of two things. Either the firmware on this receiver board and gyro is different than the other two, and it actually sets its level position based on the position of the plane when the gyro spins up and calibrates. Or, and this is what I think is going on, because it's not doing this with the other two planes. I think when they installed the board, I think the front of the board, the receiver board, is tilted up a little bit, and so it thinks that level, you know, when the board is level, the nose is pointing down. And that's why I couldn't counteract it with the elevator the first time I threw it in the air, until I put a bunch of trim into the elevator, because I believe that's where the gyro thinks level is. It's like this instead of like this, because I could trim it out in manual mode and get the balance correct in manual mode, and it flew just fine and stayed nice and level at cruising speed. And then I would switch it back into gyro mode, and all of a sudden it would want to nose down again. So if you have the same kind of issue, that is the way to mitigate it. Whether the receiver board is tilted up inside the fuselage, or whether the firmware is detecting this as level when you connect the battery, if you're having the same kind of issue, just lift the tail up on it when the gyro initializes, when you connect the battery. Just lift the tail up on it till the plane is level, so that the gyro knows what's level when you toss it in the air, and then you're not going to have any trim on your elevator. Okay, so now that I got that all figured out, I was chasing that squirrel around that tree until I got dizzy trying to get the trim and the balance correct on this plane for beginner, intermediate, and manual mode. Now I have it. So today I'm going to go out and test it in full manual mode. I'm going to do a couple of flights with full manual mode from start to finish. We're going to launch it, we're going to fly it, and we're going to land it in manual mode. I have made the adjustment to the control linkages on the control horns for the ailerons. So I have maximum movement on the ailerons now. I still have to move the control rod to the inside hole on the rudder to get maximum movement on the rudder. And I still have to move the control rod on the control horn on the elevator to the top position, so I get maximum movement on the elevator. The elevator still has I wouldn't say very little authority, but it doesn't have enough authority. So, but I was going to do that today before I made this final review, and because I was changing one of the linkages on one of the other planes last night, and I broke the control rod and had to repair it. I want to use this as a tutorial. When I get ready to change this linkage, I want to show you what I'm going to do to modify this that I think will make it easier going forward if you need to move it again, and so we don't break this control linkage. So I'll be posting a tutorial on that. So anyway, we should have the maximum movement on our ailerons. I still don't have maximum movement on the rudder and the elevator, but I'm going to do that soon, but I want to do it as a tutorial. So now I will meet you out at the field. We're going to see how well this plane flies in complete manual mode with the RadioMaster TX16S transmitter. We'll see you out there. I have never flown this in manual mode start to finish. Let me figure out where the wind's coming from. So this will be the first. Let's get it in the air. And as you can see, there's no gyro input. Let's get it. That was a pretty easy launch, but because this does not have the slow flight capability, of course, of the Volantex Sport Cub 500 or the Eachine Mini P51D, it requires a little bit aggressive chuck on the plane when you're launching it in manual mode. Check out the roll rate now. Still not as fast as I would like it to be. I've adjusted the control linkages for maximum throw on the ailerons, so that's about as good as we're going to get it on the roll rate, but that is 100% better than what it was. Does require a little bit of back pressure in the turns on the elevator, but look how smoothly you can fly it with this transmitter. Sure makes me look a lot better, doesn't it, as an RC pilot? But it's all the transmitter. Alright, so let's see, loop. Now, you saw how wide and how slow that loop was. I have not made the adjustment on the elevator yet for maximum throw, but I certainly need to do that. I wanted to save that for a tutorial to show you what I do when I change those. See that? Look how large that loop is. But it does power through it. I have to give the plane credit for that. It powers through those big, huge, wide loops. But man, what a difference this makes with this transmitter. No comparison. I won't use a toy transmitter again, that's for sure. And as you can see there, that's where I'm lacking in elevator authority. It descended on me pretty good there. But I will have that fixed. And I'll put maximum throw on the rudder as well. But oh my gosh, is that cool or what?
another big, huge, wide loop. Another roll. It's just a completely different plane with this transmitter. All three of those planes are just completely different planes. And I finally have the balance on this plane right where I want it, man. It's right on the CG, neutral balance on the CG now. So I got no complaints about the balance. Once I quit chasing that squirrel around the tree and getting so dizzy trying to get this thing trimmed in gyro mode and manual mode. Another roll. I mean, isn't that awesome? I mean, that is a completely different plane. And we're flying in 4 to 6 mile an hour wind on the ground. I don't know what it is, 20 or 30 feet up. But it's usually heavier up there. But man, what is that cool or what? Big, big, big. Oh, I couldn't pull through it. Batteries dropped off a little bit now. Couldn't pull through that loop. And I can tell that it's slowing down a bit on the battery. So I am really eager to see what those loops are going to be like once I get the adjustment made on this elevator. But look how it holds its line. Look how it holds its line now. It is now trimmed and balanced very, very well. Gotta like that. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, this is definitely another awesome little plane from Eachine. I love these little 400 Warbirds. I'd love to get my hands on the T-28 now. Okay, so let's come back over here. I think the wind is still kind of a crosswind in front of me. So let's bring it in and see if we can set it down without crashing it. Oh, not very good. But I've got to get the expo adjusted. I have a little too much expo, or not enough smoothness on the expo curve on these planes yet. That's one thing I haven't had a chance to fine tune. Plus the fact we're coming in a little bit of a crosswind. So, but what an awesome flying little plane, manual mode, start to finish. I think that when I get my expo curve smoothed out a little bit from mid stick to 3/4 stick, those landings will be a lot smoother. Not a bad launch. You do, since this one doesn't have as good slow flight capability as the Sport Cub 500 or the P51D Mustang. You need to get a little bit better chuck in manual mode to get it flying, you know, without getting any wing wag out of it. So that launch was pretty good. How about that roll rate? It's not as good as the P51 Mustang, but oh my gosh, compared to where it was before with the toy transmitter, that is awesome. Yeah. See that? Much better. So I finally got this thing balanced where it's going into the wind right now, so it's climbing ever so slightly. But I've got it balanced now on the CG where it will hold its line attitude-wise, which is great. It doesn't feel tail heavy. It doesn't feel nose heavy. It feels like it's right where it should be, and it handles a lot better. Another roll. Now I'll show you. We'll do a loop on it. We'll attempt to do a loop. Sometimes you can perform a loop, sometimes you can't because I don't have much elevator authority on here. and that was it. That was kind of angled. We'll come back and see if we can do it, get a straight run at it. Gain a little altitude. Okay, so there we got a loop out of it, but that was awfully wide. And when the battery starts, you know, dropping off a little bit, it will hang there inverted for quite a while before it finally noses back down and pulls through the loop, because it just does not have enough elevator authority, and the elevator currently is in the center position of the control horn. So I'm going to have to move that up to the top. It still won't have, I don't think, really tight loops, but see that? See how long it hangs there before it finally noses back over? I don't think that even moving up to the top hole, it's going to be a lot better, but I don't think this plane is going to have a tremendous amount of elevator authority, even moving that up. Maybe I'll be mistaken. Maybe moving it up to the top hole will be plenty, but we'll see. All right, another roll. But oh my gosh, man, I finally got this thing balanced out. When we get back to the HQ, I'll tell you what I think was going on with this plane and why I was having such a hard time getting this plane balanced the way that it needed to be. Isn't that awesome? Man, I tell you, flying it with this transmitter makes all the difference in the world. But I am so happy that I finally got this thing trimmed out, got it balanced. It is flying great. Absolutely fantastic, and it is an absolute joy to fly with this transmitter in manual mode.
Okay, so what did you think of that? Now, pairing this up with this transmitter makes this a completely different plane to fly. And did you see how well it tracked? I've got this balance. I've got it completely balanced and completely trimmed out now. Excuse me. The only thing I have left to do is to change the control linkage on the rudder and the elevator. And as you could see, you know, when you're taking off, you've got a fresh battery, it does a pretty nice loop. But that's full deflection of the elevator. Those loops I was performing were full deflection of the elevator. I want to have a lot more authority on the elevator than that, so that's why I'm gonna move that linkage, and then after I get the linkage moved on the rudder, we'll take it back out and practice some stall turns with it too. But so much better to fly now that it's balanced out. It's, you know, I get it completely neutral. I was going to tell you about the weight that I added to it, but I'm actually going to lighten this up, and the amount of weight is not important. You want to use as little weight as you possibly can to get this plane balanced. But the CG point, I'm just on the outside of the wheels, right there where the carbon rod is, where the spar is. And if you get this plane neutrally balanced right there on that spar, then you're good to go. So just use as little weight as you possibly can and move it back on the tail as far as you can to get that balance correct. The further you move it back, the less the amount of weight you're going to have to add to the plane. And so that's what I'm going to do. Now that I know exactly where I need to have the plane balanced, I'm going to remove this weight. I'm going to see exactly what I need to attach to the tail back here at the very end, so the plane can be as light as possible. The further I go out, the less counterweight I'm going to need for that nose. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll have that set up the next time I take it out. And but it's a great little plane. I just had a blast with it out there today. And it's once you get the balance correct on it for the CG, the plane is a lot more stable. I hope you noticed that during the flights today. I didn't have a single instance where this plane wanted to wing over like it was before, because I was fighting a balance issue and an elevator trim issue at the same time, and that was kind of making it unstable. But now that I've taken the trim out of the elevator and got it balanced correct, and it can hold the tail up, you know, so that the gyro initializes correctly for gyro flight. and that worked out fine too. So no problems whatsoever. It was an absolute blast to fly. I just want a little more elevator and rudder authority, which I will have when I make the modification. This is another great little plane from Eachine, and I think it is well worth the price. And like I said, if you pair this plane up, or any of these micro planes up, with one of these transmitters, there's just nothing like it. You know, you can't fly it that way with a toy transmitter. You can have a lot of fun with these planes, and I had an awesome time with these planes with the toy transmitter. But if you want to have the maximum amount of fun with these planes, pair it up with a transmitter like this. But my recommendation for this plane, I give it a big thumbs up. I mean, it is a great, durable, fast, aerobatic little plane, and if you get your counterweight correct, just get your plane balance on the CG the way it needs to be, it's going to be extremely stable in the air, and it's going to track very well. So that's my recommendation for this plane on what you need to do to get it flying optimally, and it is definitely a fantastic little 400 millimeter wingspan Warbird. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.